So I don't know how it would have been 10 years ago, but I'm glad it's being made now when people are talking about it freely. But I also, I think things have changed even since we've made it, so that's what's always scary. You want the movie to hold up, but it's super hard when things are changing so fast in our culture.
Crazy how fast it all feels. I had no idea I was gonna love it this much.
Yeah, I don't think I could ever get married.
It makes me feel adult in a way that I don't want to be.
I mean, just because you're married doesn't mean you need to be monogamous for the rest of your life.
Have you ever thought about being with someone else? Would you ever consider an open thing?
Hello.
Hi, Hannah. How are you?
Good. You guys just adjusted my posture really quick.
Don't worry, I've been readjusting also. So,
Yeah. Hi.
hi. I just talked to Haley and Ben, so this is a natural segue now to talk to you about the film.
Perfect. Great. They warmed it up for me.
Certainly. By the way, where are you? I like your background.
Thank you. I'm in my dining room, which does not yet have a dining table or chairs.
Very fancy with the wallpaper and everything. It looks very
Thank you. It was my pandemic project.
It turned out good, and I like the mix of colors.
Yeah.
So.
It's pretty cool. It's like,
Oh wow.
oh, well, you can't really see because the lights are on, but it's got kind of like an ornate ceiling that's pretty high. I don't have a light fixture, so.
It's a work in progress. It's coming together, right?
Yeah, but I figured the wallpaper was a good background for these guys.
Certainly is. Well,
Thank you.
I enjoyed this film because I felt like I've been in these moments. Okay, one or two of these moments, the doctor situation, or those scares and worries. I feel like many people who will watch this will relate with something because it's very relatable, or at least know someone. What was your initial inspiration for it? Was it a situation you faced potentially? Because there's always something rooted that comes, in a project. And I'd imagine something was close to home in some way for you to create this film, or at least inspire you for it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Mark and Mary are both very similar to me. I think they are two sides of myself. There's part of me that's a little more traditional or old fashioned, and then there's a part of me that's experimental and progressive. And so I thought it'd be fun to split myself up into two characters and see what happens. And yeah, there's definitely a lot of instances that I took from real life that, then of course became exaggerated to fit the story. But like, I always hate being on hold. Like being stuck on hold especially at a doctor's office.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
so stressful. So that was kind of where that came from. That wasn't my circumstance, but but that was, an initial spark for sure.
Interesting. Yeah, these are, it's a very relatable film. I felt like, and the characters too. These are regular people in a sense that we all know, or maybe have inside ourselves too. And as I mentioned to Haley and Ben, like this sort of story would have been taboo probably like 10 years ago for sure, but now it's relatable and you see this, it's more common.
Definitely.
Do you think this movie would have worked 10 years ago? How do you think it would have turned out versus now, in times where we're free to talk about these things and it's not as crazy because it's facts of life?
Yeah, that's fascinating. I mean, obviously, ethical non-monogamy and open relationships and polyamory, they've all been around for a long time, much before this movie, of course. But I was surprised at how little films and television were tackling the subject, considering it's so in the zeitgeist. It's talked about all the time.
Yeah.
So I don't know how it would have been 10 years ago, but I'm glad it's being made now when people are talking about it freely. But I also, I think things have changed even since we've made it, so that's what's always scary. You want the movie to hold up, but it's super hard when things are changing so fast in our culture. So you just gotta kind of say this was a moment in time, and I hope it resonates.
I also appreciated the message here too, because fun is fun. You can certainly have it and explore things, but there's consequences too sometimes, when you're not responsible. And I like that these characters have to go through that because it paints also a realistic picture. It's just like certain things you make decisions, but there's repercussions for certain things too. How important was that for you to establish that, hey, we're going to try things, but I'm going to showcase some real pitfalls potentially of doing things like that, and what are certain possibilities that could very well happen.
Yeah, it was extremely important to me to portray the positive side of their open relationship as well as some of the consequences, because to me it wasn't all bad and it isn't all good. It's a mixture of things like life is. And I wanted to be clear that I'm not preaching against polyamory or monogamy. It's not one way or the other. It's like just to each their own kind of situation. This is the story of one couple and one couple's experience. But I did want it to be real. I wanted it to have sillier sides of it, but also I wanted to think about what would actually happen if I were in their shoes. And that's really what the North Star was. What do I think would actually happen?
Mm-hmm. And certainly, yeah, there's a lot of things. It's like a roller coaster, right? In a lot of ways too. I asked Ben about it. Was it your idea? Whose idea was it for the porn stash? Because I thought it was awesome. I told Mark about it.
That was in the script. That was in the script, but I didn't want to force Ben into it because I wanted him to bring a lot of himself to the character. So I asked him, do you want to do this? It's okay if you don't. And he was like, you know what? Let's do it.
I thought it added a character to his character in a lot of ways too. Yeah, it was
like trying to be hip and ironic and couldn't quite get there,
Yeah, and like I said him, I'm like, it must have worked because he was crushing it on there.
Yeah.
So hey, it all worked out in the end.
It worked out.
Little spoiler alert here, but I loved how ambiguous and open-ended the end is, because that's how life is, and you technically don't know what awaits us, right? And these characters too, they've been through a lot. Tell me if you had any other versions or ideas for how to end it, or is this what you set out to do? And the second part of this question is, what do you envision for these characters going in the future? The way you kind of wrote them.
Yeah, there was never another ending. That was always the ending because, spoiler, but the title is the ending. Title is the spoiler. So once I knew the title, I knew the ending. And it never changed from there. Obviously, different elements changed throughout, and there was a ton of improv, and we played around with many different things. But I always knew that the ending would end how it would. And then, in terms of their future, I hope people will know that there is the possibility where they can be together and where they can have a non-monogamous relationship and have a workout. It just didn't necessarily always work out in this time frame of their life. I'm really obsessed with temporary love and young marriages. I think it's a very interesting topic.
Another thing I mentioned to them was the time frame aspect of it. Like, I'm a firm believer that certain people come into your life for a certain time period. Even if you think you're meant to be with them, it's sometimes not in the card, just personality wise, or you grow apart, or you were good for a certain time period together that you were in, and you need someone else to take you to the next level in your life's chapter, in a sense. How much of a firm believer are you in that you meet people for certain time periods to either open up your mind or have this experience that'll lead you throughout your life for your different relationships, and not all things are meant to be, in a sense?
I'm really glad you said that, because that's really been the thesis of my work so far, is like temporary love, and people come into your life to help you get through something, but it just because you're not necessarily together forever doesn't make it any less valuable. I think sometimes that can be more painful in life than it is in art. So I'd rather make art about that than constantly lose it. But I totally agree with you. I mean, I think, we've got to share our experiences and have other people share theirs, so we grow. We don't want to surround ourselves with people that have the same mindset as us.
Yeah. And
I always like to surround myself with people that like to do the same things as me, but they have a different perspective on that thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's something about being drawn to people who are similar to you, but also you get more richness and kind of, benefit of being people who are different than you, or are more open-minded than you, kind of challenge you in a sense, in that way, to give you a different perspective in life. And I felt like these characters, like I mentioned that also to Haley and Ben, which was like, they might have never been meant for each other. They might not have been a great fit, long term at all. It just seems like at certain point they were a good fit, but people are sometimes good for each other for short periods of time and not maybe long term.
Yeah, and I love when it's intangible like that, you know?
Mhm.
I love when it's like you can't figure out what the spark was. But I definitely knew I wanted Mark to start off more traditional and then kind of get out of his comfort zone. And then
Mhm.
I wanted Mary to see the value in kind of getting back in her comfort zone. And it's okay to live a life that's normal. It doesn't need to be exciting and adventurous all the time. You know, it was important for me to, for them to each see the other's perspective by the end of it.
Yeah, and I think that is well documented. It kind of rocks back and forth, which I like because both of their minds change throughout, you know. And
Totally.
yeah, it's like like I mentioned, a roller coaster back and forth in that way. So it's just I felt like this was one of the very more human kind of relatable films I've seen in a while because you just understand even if you can't put yourself in that position, you know what they're going through. It's just kind of lifelike in so many ways.
That's awesome. Yeah, I don't really think characters need to be likable. I think they need to be understandable.
Hmm.
You know, and obviously it's great when a character is mysterious, but you have to understand some aspect of how they tick, and then I think you can get on board with a lot. You know, it's I also really love movies and shows that where both characters have a very valid point, and it's hard to choose who's right or wrong. I mean, that's way more fun to me than someone being in the wrong and someone being in the right. They both perspectives have to be valid.
And final curious question I had while watching, I had so many thoughts going through my head, which is great,
Yeah,
you know, because it makes
awesome.
you think. Um, was there a consideration of them having the baby, or you knew from the start that that was kind of the fracture that would kind of let them free from each other? Because if they had a baby, they might have tried to stick it through it. I kind of wondered and pondered that as I watched the third act of the film. You know, would the baby
Yeah.
really hold them through, or that was always the intention to give him that space to separate?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I mean, spoil. I guess we're just gonna go for it with the
Yeah,
spoiler.
I'll mention the
Um,
spoiler alert so people know eventually when they're watching it.
okay, great. Yeah, I really wanted Mary to want to have the baby because I
Mm.
liked taking this non-traditional girl and letting her make maybe a more traditional choice because I thought that that was really interesting. But
Yeah.
life got in the way, and there are so many things that could have caused the end of that pregnancy, and whether it be by, you know, the drinking and the partying and all of that, or by just nature, because unfortunately those tragic circumstances happened, we never get to know. And that's just like the ending of the movie. We don't know. So to me, that was the right way to do it because I wanted to show that she was changing, and just because she was non-traditional doesn't mean she didn't have the capacity to be interested in being a mother.
Hmm. And we did leave the sort of thing ambiguous. Did we know it was Ben's, or it might have been potentially of someone else's too?
I mean, you're totally right. In my mind, it was his. In my
Okay.
mind, she's telling the truth that she was being safe and using protection with others. But you're right. There's actually no way to 1,000% know.
Yeah. I love how everything's sort of ambiguous, but true to life and true to interpretation and form. And that's what makes this movie really unique. And I
Thank
really
you.
enjoyed what you created there because I thought it was a really fantastic movie that, you know, people should see and, you know, take something from it. There's absolutely something you can take no matter what from this film.
Oh, thanks so much. That's so great to hear because we had such a fun time making it. So to get to hear anyone who's seen it and take something from it is really awesome to me.
Yeah.
So
And
thank
I
you. It made my day.
no, absolutely. I think there's good lessons too to take, you know, and some people,
Yeah. What
it's,
not to do.
yeah, what not to do too. Exactly. So fantastic work, Hannah, on that one. I just thought you delved in for something contemporary, you know, and something that's hitting us in society, that really honest stories are stories that I think are really more like we can get so many sequels of superhero movies. You need some
Right.
grounded, honest stories out there to kind of give you that other feel for what films are really.
Definitely. I mean, I think the best world is a world where there's both. You know, I want to make a superhero movie too. I
I hope
want
so.
to go back and make my tiny indie films. So
I would
I'm
be,
so glad both exist.
yeah. And you know, I guess if I don't think I was asked, I said that to Ben and Haley. Their chemistry was so great and so like realistic. this movie would have been so different if one of them wasn't cast, if there was some other person. Did you ever have that in thought throughout too? Like, oh, wow, I did the right choice. Because if I switch one of them out, this whole feel and vibe to me could have been vastly different.
Oh, definitely. We got so lucky because we didn't do auditions for their roles or chemistry reads. It was really a gut thing, and we were moving so fast. So I got incredibly lucky, and I had a feeling because they were both the same age, and I had spoken to both of them, and it felt like their perspectives were both very close to their characters. Maybe they were just making me think that, but they did a great job.
Well, that's what he told me too. So I guess there's truth in that.
Yeah, and they were both willing to improvise, which was so important to me. And I think they were both ready to take on that challenge, and that's a certain type of person that is down to clown.
Absolutely. Well, awesome job once again. I hope people see it, and I'm excited to see what's next from you, because you certainly have a unique feel for characters and what's happening in life.
Thank you so much. That's so sweet of you.
Thank you, Hannah. Hope to catch up on the next one.
Sounds great.
Bye-bye. And get that table by the next time, maybe.
I'll have a dining table next time. Hopefully we won't have to do it on Zoom though, because maybe the world will improve and we'll be
right. It'd be great to be in person.
That would be wonderful.
Bye, Hannah. Have a great one.
You too.